We're here with Anthony Grimani, acoustician and home theater designer. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. So what do you got here? What are we looking at?
We're looking at a revolution in loudspeaker technology. I spent a lot of years in my career working on electronics, and then I transitioned into the realization that the room is a really important part of the story, and spent the last 20 years working on rooms, and rooms have people, and rooms have speakers. And over that 20 years, ended up coming up with a list of about 50 problems that kept showing up with typical speaker technologies out there. Mm-hmm. And with my chief engineer, Manuel Karuba, we decided to solve that problem.
So you mean those 50 problems?
The problems we solve. So the problem is actually pretty simple. I'm going to talk evolution a little bit. So we all know we can get a big, beautiful 85, 90, 100, 120-inch picture pretty easily today. Meanwhile, the technologies and quality around loudspeakers essentially stayed stuck in that mid-70s paradigm.
I've always noticed that, speaker technology has not really moved like video technology, for example.
Correct. Now, it wouldn't matter if sound didn't matter, but audio and sound does matter. As my ex-boss, George Lucas, said, sound is 50% of the movie-going experience. So if you got bad sound, you're missing half of the movie. Mm-hmm. The emotional content is in the sound. The sound does affect you emotionally a whole lot more than picture will ever. Mm-hmm. You can cry if you hear an absolutely beautiful piece of music, and it's hard to cry by just looking at a picture, even if it's ultra-high-def 3D.
Yep, absolutely. So, okay, so you identified these 50 problems or so based upon your work with the installers who actually put them in, and you've consulted with them. And what are some of the basis of these problems?
So one of the bases that we solve actually with this top part here of the loudspeaker is the dispersion of sound in a room. For the last 40, 50, 60 years, speakers radiate into a room with sound, with sort of a sound bubble that changes with frequency. Mm-hmm. And so what you're hearing in front of the speaker is one thing. What the person sitting to your left is hearing, left that way, is hearing a slightly different thing. And moreover, what the room is lit up with is yet a different thing. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you're sitting in the room and you're hearing a direct sound from the speaker to you, so in that direction. Then, just slightly later, there's all the sound coming back from the room. And in fact, there's about 2 or 3 times more sound coming back from the room. So what I'm always fighting when I'm actually going out to do what's called a final commissioning of a system, which is the tuning, I'm fighting the fact that the speaker could be a good speaker, it sends really nice direct sound, but the room may not actually get the right sound because the speaker is sending sound off axis, and that's where we start to do all this room treatment stuff to try to control that. Mm-hmm. But if you go back to the source and actually make a speaker that spreads into the room, I like doing this, spreads into the room very evenly, so that in the bass region, which is carried by the big boomer over here, or by the high frequency, which is actually played on this speaker by a beautiful little small tweeter over here. If it's all spraying into the room evenly, you have better consistency from room to room, and better sound throughout the room. Mm-hmm. Which means
location to location.
From location. So you can actually sit there, or sit here, or sit here, sit over there, and you get a much more consistent sound field, so that I can hear an emotional, engaging movie, and you can too, and you can too, and everybody in the room can.
Another problem, though, that you've identified is the complexity of these systems. Right? You've got amplifiers, you've got cables running everywhere, and it's so complex to set them up. And what happens if one of them isn't working, or you got the polarity reversed on it? How do you track down these problems? It becomes a big deal.
That's one of the issues with that 1970s paradigm is if you look at how these things have been hooked up, they haven't really changed since then very much, except that back then there was only 2 channels. Now there's up to 9, 10, 11, 12 channels. So all these things have multiplied to a point of complete chaos. So in these commissioning processes, I'm fighting the fact that there's so many cables that can go wrong. It's just overwhelming. The law of statistics that says that the chance that it's actually hooked up correctly is infinitely nil.
Infinitely.
So what we did in this loudspeaker is we made it a fully powered speaker. All you have to do with the speaker is plug one wire into the power of the wall, and then plug one Cat5 cable right over here, and that Cat5 cable receives the sound, and everything else is done inside the speaker, what's called a crossover, the equalization, the amplification. Everything is nicely contained in here, so that those racks of equipment you'll see in a big home theater are gone. Everything is just done inside here. It's more efficient, works better, and has less problems.
Now, you said connected with a Cat5 cable, so this is essentially a networked device.
It's a networked device. Now, the audio comes in through the network, and also we can ping the speaker. Or you can contact your integrator and go, can you make sure that my system's working? And with one ping, they can run a self-diagnostic test and make sure everything is right.
Well, I got to tell you, I have heard these speakers. I heard first a stereo pair at CEDIA, at the CEDIA show, and just yesterday a multi-channel array in a home theater setup, and the sound quality is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Just phenomenal. It won Best Sound at CEDIA by many, many people, including myself. And one thing that was really cool was, as you walk between a pair of speakers, of these speakers, you can walk almost up to this point right here and still hear a nice stereo image.
Wow.
That, I assume, is because of this waveguide technology that's sitting here, because it's so evenly distributed across the horizontal plane. I mean, it's a wonderful achievement. One other thing we want to talk about is this cabinet.
Yeah. So one of the things we run into sometimes is that wood cabinetry is sensitive to breakage or humidity, and is heavy. So we actually made this out of tungsten impregnated urethane, which actually gives us a lot of benefits, including the fact that it's a lot more rigid, a lot more damped, easier to make the shape we want, and also more resistant to droppage and breakage during shipment.
Technology is doing amazing things, as evidenced by this with sound. Like I never imagined that a pair of speakers could be designed to the point where you could be anywhere in the stereo field and still get kind of an equal stereo field out of it. Will technology ever fix the your room is not a perfect room for audio problem, do you think?
There's a number of things you can do in designing the speaker so that it's more room independent, for one, and you can actually tune the speaker to correct for some of the room issues. I'll be honest, as an acoustician, if the room is all echoey, you can't stop it. Once the sound is launched, it's going ping, 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 ping. You got to control it in the room. So the answer is yes and no.
All right, there we go.
So who is this aimed at? I mean, these are pretty expensive.
Right. The first set of customers is high-end home cinema owners who want to have their private cinema, maybe 2 or 3 rows of seating, and who are spending this amount of money actually already on more traditional loudspeakers, but who are forward-thinking. So people who may look at a Tesla car and go, "That's cool. You know, there's a lot of invention in there. That's a cool thing." It's people who are progressive. And who want reliability, want great sound, want connectivity.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate the opportunity to look at this wonderful speaker, and I really appreciate the opportunity to hear it. I hope you guys get a chance to hear it at some point.
I would love to.